Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Today, we'll be walking through what you need to know to apply for your NPN and bring your natural health product to the Canadian market. My name is Alessandra. I'm the digital marketing specialist here at Quality Smart Solutions, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. During the webinar, you're going to hear directly from two of our in-house experts, Cory, Philion, and David Johnston. This is going to be a casual conversation paired with a slide walkthrough. And you are welcome to drop your questions in the chat at any time, so please don't be shy. We're going to bring them up during the Q&A at the end, but Dave and Cory, please feel free to jump in and address questions as they go, especially if you notice them and if you think that they're relevant to what you're presenting at the moment. So there's no need to really wait for the Q&A if the timing feels right. And just a quick note, we'll be sending out the webinar recording by email after the session. So as I mentioned here in the chat, please keep an eye on your inbox. Okay. So let me just do a quick introduction to our speakers. Cory is our regulatory project specialist. He has over a decade of experience working with quality management systems in highly regulated industries. He brings deep technical expertise to regulatory submissions. And Dave leads our sales team and works directly with companies launching natural health products in Canada. He helps them understand and navigate NPN requirements with confidence. So this is just an overview of what we're gonna watch today. So we're gonna start by explaining what an NPN is and why it matters. Then we're gonna move on to how to know if your product qualifies, what Health Canada looks for in an application, the key steps in the licensing process. We're also going to go over some of the most common mistakes and share tips to help you navigate the process more smoothly, if I may. And on top of that, we'll cover timelines, how to avoid delays, and what to expect once you get your NPN. And of course, we'll wrap things up with a live Q&A. So yeah, I think that's it. Without further ado, let's get started. Dave, over to you, please.
Thanks, Alessandra. I see one question just saying, how long is this? We're going to try and keep it under an hour as best we can. We're hoping somewhere between 30 to 40-minute presentation and some time for questions at the end. So just to answer that question in the chat. But yeah, thanks all for joining. As Alessandra mentioned, I lead the sales team at Quality Smart Solutions. Really a lot of my role consists of speaking with brand owners and business owners, very often not selling their products in Canada yet, whether they be a startup business or some sort of international existing brand, and really help them kind of understand what regulations are going to apply to them and how we can help them bring their products to market. So the focus of today's call is on natural health products and specifically getting the NPN. And so what is an NPN? It stands for Natural Product Number, and it's issued to natural health products that have been approved by Health Canada. So it essentially shows that your ingredients, your dosages, your formula, and also the claims about your product have all been vetted and approved by Health Canada. In the grand scheme of things, Health Canada is a pretty strict regulator compared to others around the world. So it does, carry a lot of weight in some markets around the world, and obviously is a requirement to sell these products in Canada. But from a consumer standpoint, if you see an NPN on a product in Canada, you can, be assured that the formula has gone through a review, the dosages and the ingredients they're using are safe, and they are effective for whatever the product is claiming to be effective for. There's some really common everyday products that people see on the store shelves that fall into this category, and all different kinds of products. Just some key ones I pulled out were Buckley's cough syrup, Hall's lozenges, icy hot back patches, Vicks Vapo Rub, Pepto-Bismol, products like that, as well as your daily vitamins, minerals, things like a fish oil capsule or a turmeric capsule, all traditional kind of dietary supplements would fall into this category. And so I touched on it, but basically the reason you need this NPN is just because it's part of the Health Canada requirements, and specifically for the natural health product regulations, that the regulations dictate that products need to be approved, and the approval process is getting an NPN. And so if you don't have an NPN and you try and sell in Canada, basically you might be able to get by on a small scale, kind of fly under the radar, but really you're not in compliance with the regulations. So it's just a matter of time before either Health Canada or some sort of retail partner that you're working with, reaches out, somehow needs to force you to stop selling this product. So, any legitimate retailer that's either brick and mortar or, e-com platforms like Amazon or other, channels like that, all of the bigger players are going to be enforcing these regulations. So ultimately, to scale your product and sell a lot of them in Canada, you're going to have to get an NPN if your product is considered a natural health product. So that kind of leads us to the next slide, which is your product a natural health product? And, how do we understand what products would fall into this category? As I'd mentioned, there's like a very wide range of different formats and types of products. Anything from topical products to capsules and tablets, powders, liquids, all different kinds. Certain products are very black and white in terms of, it's pretty obvious that they're going to fall into the natural health product category. Some of the ones I mentioned would be, traditional formats like capsules and tablets, multivitamins or just general letter vitamins, your vitamins A, B, C, D, common mineral supplements like zincs and magnesiums and things like that. All traditional dietary supplements are pretty much going to fall into the natural health product category. But there's a lot of other product formats that tend to not be as straightforward. That would be things like powders, liquids, topical products, even things like chewing gums. Sometimes these products can be natural health products, or that is the category that they would fall into. Sometimes they're going to be either a food or a cosmetic product or something that is actually not a natural health product. So the two things that we would really typically look at are the ingredients in your product and the claims about what your product is doing. So when it comes to the ingredients, certain ingredients just essentially are not allowed to be used in either food products or cosmetic products. So sometimes the ingredients in your formula alone or the dosage that you're using of certain ingredients will kind of push you into the natural health product category. When other times it is the claims. So sometimes your ingredients would be allowed to be a food or a cosmetic, but the claims that you're using do not, align with the food or the cosmetic category. Some examples, one on the food natural health product side would be something like turmeric. Turmeric that, you buy for your spice rack, that is going to be a food product. The exact same ingredient sold in a capsule format is going to fall into the natural health product category. And it's probably going to have a dosage saying take 1 or 2 per day. It's going to say that it'll help you with your joint health or inflammation or some specific cause. An example on the cosmetic natural health product interface side would be something like aloe vera gel. Aloe vera as an ingredient would be allowed to be used in cosmetic products as well as the natural health product category. But, the cosmetic category, you would have to say just something generic like it's a moisturizer or a aloe vera lotion or something. But if you wanted to make a claim around, helping with minor burns or sunburn relief, that would be viewed as a therapeutic claim and would push you into the natural health product category. So really the summary would be the key focus up front for you should be determining, am I a natural health product? If not, what am I? Am I a food? Am I a cosmetic? Am I something else? And if you are a natural health product, that's where the rest of this presentation today is going to be very, very relevant. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Cory, who will go into a bit more detail on the actual application and submission to Health Canada. So yeah, take it away.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Certainly from a technical perspective, it's important to confirm with your internal team and your third-party partners, such as your co-manufacturers, that information is readily available surrounding your individual ingredients or raw materials, such as certificate of analysis, finished product specs, things like any information surrounding your dosage and your dosage units. These are all vital to have in advance. So oftentimes we'll be working with clients and this information isn't either readily available or there's a delay in getting some of this compiled, which can obviously lead to delays or in some cases an inability to move forward. Therefore, it's critical to align with your manufacturer or your responsible team that's going to be making the finished product. To expand on additional products or additional product information required that Health Canada is looking for, you want to make sure you have your master formula finalized, your sourcing of ingredients. For example, when animal sources are being used, additional documentation is required. We also want to make sure that the ingredient sources are in compliance with Health Canada's database. So that they're already found on Health Canada's database, or in the event that we have to submit what's called an information database request, we want to know that in advance by taking a look at your source information. Having well organized documents from all parties carrying out your licensable activities, so manufacturing, packaging, labeling, importing, these are all critical to have in preparing an application, what constitutes a strong application in the eyes of your reviewer. And so moving on to the next slide, common mistakes that we sometimes encounter. When it comes to the integrity of the documents outlined during the last slide, you will have to be able to demonstrate prior to import or product release that the documents are in fact applicable to your respective formula. Here at QSS, we can help ensure that all required documents are completed in full, as Health Canada is looking for. If this isn't the case, Health Canada will often issue sometimes issue an automatic refusal, and in most cases they'll submit or they'll send what's called an information request notice, which will have a certain time frame to respond to, typically 5 to 10 business days to carry out that request. At Quality Smart Solutions, we carry out an internal quality check before submitting to Health Canada, just to give that extra perspective on the product license application or PLA, and any supporting documents that we require, such as evidence and safety. This makes for a strong application and a complete application, right? So in support of novel health claims, the golden standard is peer-reviewed, placebo-controlled human clinical trials that demonstrate safety and efficacy at the doses that you're looking to license. Animal studies, for example, foster less confidence due to the nature of the target group. But once the application is submitted, we cannot make any changes to the medicinal ingredients, hence the importance of having that finalized master formula that I had mentioned earlier. I would say it's critical to understand the allowable ranges of your finished product specs to make sure that they fall within Health Canada requirements. Is something that we can help you determine. An inability to demonstrate this, in addition to not having sufficient stability data, for example, indicating that label claims are being met at the end of your product's shelf life. These are areas we encounter issues, I would say, quite often. And lastly, I did want to talk a little bit about proprietary blends, as they do need to be disclosed to Health Canada. And it's a common misconception, because we see some in the US and other countries that this is a viable option, not to list every individual ingredient at the concentration that you're claiming. So please keep that in mind when bringing your business into Canada. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Cory. And And so, yeah, to kind of expand a little bit on what Cory went through, there's kind of these key building blocks that you're going to go through when we're preparing the application, on your behalf or working with you through this process. But number one, we need to determine, are you an NHP? That's going to be, once again, like always the first step. Very often retailers, we hear it a lot from Amazon that, someone gets delisted, they're told that they need an NPN. It's not always the case, maybe you're making a claim that is, forcing you into that category based on the claim you're making, but it might be easier to modify the claim, position it as a food or cosmetic. So once again, it kind of, to my previous point, you got to confirm, are we talking about a natural health product here? Assuming we are, then it's very important to determine what class the application is going to fall into. So basically, when we're submitting an application on your behalf, it's going to fall into either class 1, class 2, or class 3 applications. And what we're primarily looking at when determining what class it's going to fall into, it's a mix of the ingredients in your formula and the dosages of those ingredients. There are other factors, but those are kind of the main two. The reason why those are important and why they determine what class you fall into, it's basically because certain ingredients have essentially been pre-cleared by Health Canada. Health Canada publishes these pre-clearances in documents that they call monographs. So a lot of people are familiar with that term, but for those that are not, it's essentially a document published by Health Canada that describes the conditions under which an ingredient is approved. So, for a vitamin D example, it would say, yep, vitamin D, we understand if you're selling a single ingredient vitamin D product, these are the recognized sources of that ingredient. This is the dosage that we recommend or recognize as, a safe and effective dosage. They would have certain claims like preventing vitamin D deficiency that would be pre-cleared under their monograph. So as you can imagine, it's easier to get products approved when we're using just these pre-cleared ingredients or ingredients that have monographs. Once we've confirmed the class, that's when we'll start to gather the necessary evidence that we need to support that application, as Cory had touched on. Depending on what class the application falls into, this could be simply, or not simply, but going through the process of just aligning with what the pre-cleared information is, or like what the monographs state with Health Canada. That would be either a class 1 or class 2 application. It's when all the evidence we're using is referencing the Health Canada monographs and essentially taking, words directly from the horse's mouth, Health Canada, and just making the case that we are in line from a dosage standpoint, from an ingredient standpoint, from a claim standpoint. We're aligning and following with what they've already pre-cleared. When it comes to class 3, that is really the unique application. It's very different than the other two. That is when we have to formally prepare a dossier of evidence to submit to Health Canada. As Cory mentioned, it's going to be the double-blind clinical trials. I'm not sure if you touched on it or not, but typically we require 2 double-blind clinical trials. One single trial is often not sufficient. But so, yeah, depending on the class of application, we're going to prepare and gather the evidence that we need. This is also where the label text would come into play. Specifically for class 3 applications, we have a little bit of ability to, draft the claims and write them in a way that would try and align with what your desired goal is or what you're hoping to put on your product label. For class 1 and 2 applications, it's a little bit more that your hands are going to be tied. When we're referencing the monographs as our evidence of safety and efficacy, it means that the claims that we're going to get approved with that product, they're going to be pulled directly from that monograph and written exactly as they are in the monograph. So either way, the label text is important at this point because either we can, tell you where you might need to make some changes or concessions on your label text to align with the monograph. Or for class 3 applications, we're going to do our best to have the claim that we're trying to get approved align with the types of claims that you're hoping to put on your product label. Once we've gathered the evidence, as Cory mentioned, it would go through internal QA checks. But when we're getting ready to submit, ultimately it's submitted electronically through the Health Canada website. one very common question we get is like, do we submit it or do you submit it? It's these NPN licenses that we're helping clients with, they would be issued to your company. It would be submitted through your portal. And so, yeah, the ultimate NPN would be owned by the brand owner. But it's submitted digitally. It's not like we're mailing a binder full of paper if we're submitting all these clinical trials. Done electronically. And then, yeah, once it's submitted, the final step, Cory had touched on it, it's going to be the information request notice phase. If they have any questions, they will reach out to you with an information request notice. It's going to be either a 5 business day or 10 business day timeline, typically, as Cory touched on. And these are most common for class 3 applications. For class 1s and 2s, typically they would either just kind of outright refuse or issue an acceptance or like issue the NPN. So information request notices are most common for class 3 applications. And yeah, so when we're helping clients out, we don't just simply submit and then you're on your own. Obviously, if there is any information request notices, we would help draft those responses and provide Health Canada the information that they need. So yeah, in summary, you confirm if you're an NHP. Assuming you are, you figure out what class your application is going to fall into. We gather the evidence we need. We submit it to Health Canada. If they have any questions, they'll reach out. If not, ultimately this ends with receiving your NPN. So I think Cory's going to go through that timeline in a bit more detail. But yeah, there's many steps. You don't want to miss anything. But it's not the most complicated application in the world. So yeah, over to Cory.
Okay, quickly, I'll just address May L. Is there a document checklist available that we can bring to request to your manufacturer? There are some guidance documents that are quite helpful. They're spread amongst a couple guidance documents online, so it can be a little bit tricky. The NHP quality guide is also a good reference point. If you're working with us, that we provide a summarized checklist of all documents that you require, so that's helpful to have in terms of going to your third-party partners. So I won't address too many items in terms of stage 2 and 3. We talked about having, the business strategy in place with your finalized master formula, all the documents readily available to make for a seamless process. Once the documents are compiled and ready for submission, if you're working with Quality Smart Solutions, we do have what's called a formula review stage, which essentially gives the applicant and our technical team an opportunity to address any feedback or ask questions on any gaps that we might see. And this can take up to, 4 or more weeks, depending on the complexity of the formula, especially whether it's a class 3, where there's a lot of back and forth or more information may be required. Once that formula review is finalized, you're looking at around 2 to 3 weeks, 2 weeks for the actual product license application itself to be completed, given that we have all information readily available again. So for class 3 applications, like Dave mentioned, they're a bit more complex in the sense that we're also providing safety and efficacy reports. You can expect the larger timeframes for those products. Yeah, I will touch briefly just on I won't go into too much details around the different classes. David went into a fair bit of detail in that regard. However, the service standard times for Health Canada are 60, 90, and up to 300 days respectively for class 1, class 2, and class 3. So, and then we're seeing on the higher end of those time frames for sure, because Health Canada tends to be backed up or dealing with a lot of limited bandwidth and a lot of applicants. So once the application is submitted and the review has taken place, you'll be issued the product license, that NPN number that we touched on. We recommend waiting until this number is received for your label review to be completed. That allows us to allows you to place the NPN number on the primary display panel of your label, which is a necessity. And also things can change during Health Canada's review. So some of the verbiage around risk information or health claims might have to change during Health Canada's review of your license, of your application, sorry. So it's best that that we complete that label following product license issuance. We did want to note an important piece that runs in parallel with the product license application is your site licensing component. So if you're working with a manufacturer in Canada, that site needs to be basically verified for good manufacturing practices, and things like the finished product testing that they're conducting or that a third party is conducting is aligned with Health Canada's requirements, alongside stability studies as well. So this review, if you're dealing with either a manufacturer in Canada, or in the event that you're working outside of Canada and you require an importer, basically that manufacturer and licensable activity sites have to be annexed to an importing site license. So that review can take 5 to 9 months for Health Canada to complete. So it's really critical in terms of getting that head start while doing your product license application. So that essentially completes the 3 pillars for your sale in Canada. So you have the NPN, the label, and the site licensing. So definitely some timelines to keep in mind.
And so the next topic is about avoiding delays. I would say, before actually addressing anything on screen here, one of the big delays that we often see, and why we wanted to highlight it on this call, even though the NPN is kind of the focus of this call, we've heard many stories where clients get an NPN, they have their labels translated, they feel like they're ready to go to market, and they are manufacturing outside of Canada, and now they realize that, I can't actually import my product, or they try and import their product and it gets refused at the border or something like that. We really want to put this on your radar that getting the NPN and having your labels updated are not enough. If you're manufacturing in Canada, as Cory mentioned, it has to be with a site licensed, a company that holds an NHP site license. That is the requirement if they're in Canada, or most commonly, brands are importing finished goods into Canada, and at which point you need to have a licensed importer complete that. And it's going to take a minimum of 5 to 9 months. So we try and illustrate on that slide that these are 2 timelines kind of working hand in hand. So yeah, my number one tip to avoid the delays would be, if you're importing your product, don't overlook the importer of record component. For any class 1 or class 2 application, the bottleneck will end up being the importer side. So that is a huge thing that I would want to bring to everyone's attention. And the border has only gotten more strict with enforcing this. I won't go into too much detail, but basically there's a digital platform at the border now called CARM. And when you're going through the customs clearance process, they've digitized this. It's very hard / next to impossible to properly declare commercial goods into Canada and not have a licensed importer. So, not trying to just scare you. We've seen many real world instances where brands overlook this and are significantly behind the 8 ball when they do so. So going to what's on screen here, really, it's going to be just doing things right the first time. That's going to be kind of the common theme. There really is no Band-Aid solution. The Health Canada timelines, unfortunately, they're lengthy. It's not going to move at lightning pace, So coming into it with an open mindset and understanding that slow and steady is going to win the race, really that is something that we would, encourage brands to come into the project with, is that mindset of, flexibility on timelines, not necessarily making really hard commits to retailers and stuff like that. It's very hard to predict the Health Canada timelines, especially around site licensing and importing. But yeah, it's just, I would really stress it doesn't move that quickly. So having the right mindset, slow and steady wins the race. That's very important. There are certain strategies we can take with certain products, certain formulas, certain ingredients, where you can, kind of change either a claim to make it a little easier to get it to market, or you could, lower a dosage or something like that. But for most people, they have a formula in place that they want to bring to market. The class that you fall into, it is what it is most of the time. But when it comes to the claims, for class 1 and 2 applications, I had touched on it, but basically the claims you're getting approved, they're pulled right from the monograph, word for word. So you're going to have to have flexibility there. Maybe the ingredient you're using, you want to make an anti-inflammatory claim. Maybe that is not anywhere in the monograph. So if you're going to want to bring that product to market, you might have to remove that claim, go to market with other claims, just so some flexibility around claims language can sometimes speed things up. It can push a class 3 product into class 1 or 2. And then there's also, when it comes to claims, some flexibility around like language or just how you market a product in another country. What comes to mind is hangover, the word hangover. There's a ton of products, especially in the US right now, that would be either like hangover relief or, take it before you drink and it will help you, kind of kill the hangover. That word will never get approved by Health Canada. And so when, these types of products are coming to market in Canada, for example, they obviously need to have flexibility on how they're marketing their product. And, they just, brands need to not necessarily be so rigid when it comes to entering the Canadian market. You need the understanding that we're dealing with a strict regulator. I need to follow the rules or I'm not going to be able to sell this product. I'm going to have to be a little flexible in areas to bring the product to market. Obviously, some changes, they're so drastic that it might completely turn you off the market. That happens. But just once again, in general, I think mindset is going to be a big for getting to market quickly and doing things properly. It's going to be, slow and steady wins the race, and, having a bit of flexibility built into your mindset. Those would be the main 2 things. I don't know if there's anything else that you would add, Cory, but yeah.
I think that touches all the critical areas too.
I guess just to jump in on a few questions in the chat. So one of them was, where can you check to see if you have an importer record that's verified? There is a database of site license holders. If you probably Googled NHP site license holder list or something like that, there would be a Health Canada database where you can look up active site licenses. It won't distinguish whether that site license allows the company to manufacture, package, label, or import. It will just show a company's name, a license number, an address, and whether it's an active license or not. But you can search up, these companies in a publicly available database. And yeah, if they have a site license and they're telling you they do, it's very easy to show somebody that you have a valid site license. Our sister company, for example, is Quality Import Solutions. If you search that in the database, you will find an active site license under that name. So that's the one question. And then there was another question around label text. Cory, do you want to maybe take that question?
Necessary submit the label text. So what will happen is actually the label text will be generated from like you said in the second part of your question. So the label text generated from the application itself will be sufficient in terms of applying for the original NPN number. And then we can use that label text to kind of expand on the actual artwork that you'll be looking to put together for your finished product. That's a good question. On the note on the topic of labels, it's important to note, and this ties in with what to expect when you get your NPN. It's important to note that your website and your promotional materials are extensions of your label and also have to be compliant. So once you have the NPN, the compliant label, and the site licensing requirements are intact, you are legally able to start selling your product in Canada. We touched on having the NPN on the primary display panel, and that's obviously an important component as well. To maintain, I would say maintaining your manufacturing information, so things like batch records alongside your finished product testing of any lots that you're releasing for sale, it's important to be overseeing that quality management, because it supports your traceability in the event that there's any consumer complaints or recalls. Essentially, as soon as that product is beginning to sell, you can be accountable for any of the expectations that Health Canada has of you as a license holder, and that's a large one. So I would say also to keep an eye on any formula changes or any changes that affect the existing product license. It is your responsibility as the holder to notify Health Canada. So changes like non-medicinal ingredients, say you're changing an artificial flavor to stevia, any brand name changes, manufacturing information. So you've switched a third party, that needs to be accounted for. Oftentimes we'll see sources being changed for medicinal ingredients. Those are items that QSS, for example, can help prepare notifications and amendments for, in the event that you need to make revisions to your existing license. So also changes to your medicinal ingredients, for example, keep in mind, or adding non-monographed health claims. Those are changes that cannot be made to your existing NPN. So that would require a whole new application. I think obviously that's important to keep in mind when deciding whether or not that's a business decision that you want to pursue. You will be starting over with a new application to any changes in medicinal ingredients. I think that's everything for the presentation material itself, and we'll be moving it forward with quality or Q&A section. For that section, our president and founder Andrew Parshad will be joining us as well. Hey, Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, Andrew. I see 2 in the chat. I don't know if yeah, exactly. So, Andrew, do you want to maybe take this one?
Can we register an NPN in Canada using a U.S. company? Yeah, absolutely. You can register your NPN anywhere in the world, and the company can be in the U.S., Tokyo, Japan, wherever you'd like to. And basically, when you submit your NPN, like Health Canada, isn't checking, for where the company's registered or whatnot. Their role is really registering your product. Obviously, you have to list company's name, address, and whatnot. There is also a field for a Canadian representative. I believe that's still on the applications, Cory. I haven't looked at an application, right? The importer, right? And or manufacturer, packager, labeler. So yeah, that's.
I guess just piggybacking on would it cause any issues? No, like the NPN, it can be issued to Canadian company, US company, a different country. Like it doesn't matter where the actual company that owns the NPN is incorporated. And yeah, as long as the NPN has been issued, there's no difference in the eyes of Health Canada from a regulatory standpoint of where that license holder resides. If you look in the database, you'll see a lot of, like, if you search up GmbH, you'd find a number of German companies. If you search PVT, LT, you'll find a number of Indian companies and that sort of thing. So yeah, there's companies all over the world that own NPNs. And then, yeah, exactly. Amit. This is one that I can take. So yeah, you don't need, you will get a number of claims approved under your NPN. So let's say, for your example, you have 5 claims that got approved, but you only want to list 2 of them on your product label. That is fine. There are definitely some NPN products where they have a laundry list of approved claims, and yeah, they're not word for word including all of those on their product label. So yeah, if you have 5 approved and only 2 of them are really the main focus of your product, then you can just have those 2. What you couldn't do is the opposite. Only have 2 approved and try and make 5 claims on your label. That is where it would not work out. And so, yeah. Okay, so the shelf life, I guess I'll take an initial crack and then I'll kind of defer to Cory on this one. But My understanding is that in order to release the first batch of your product into Canada, you would need to have at the minimum an accelerated trial showing a 2 or 3 year shelf life. But then once production begins for the Canadian lots specifically, there would also need to be real-time stability trials conducted. So that's my understanding. It's like accelerated is good to start, but then there would also need to be real-time going forward. But Cory, if there's anything else you want to add, go for it.
Yeah, that's accurate. Ideally, they'll be ran in tandem, the accelerated with the real-time stability. But if you do have completed accelerated results and you can show Health Canada that you have your template and your study prepared for real-time stability, that will suffice as well. That's a good question, Jazz.
Okay, so Suraj is saying that they, I guess, are a distributor in Canada more so than the manufacturer. So yeah, if you're not the manufacturer, the same things apply. I would say most brands that are being sold in Canada, they do not manufacture their own products. They are using some sort of contract manufacturer, whether that's in Canada or abroad. So in this case, you may need to coordinate parties, but regardless of where it's coming from, there's going to have to be a company that owns an NPN for each individual formula that you're looking to sell. The product label for all of those approved products is going to have to comply with the natural health product regulations and match the specific NPN for each product. And when it comes to importing, the manufacturing facility, it sounds like, is in India. They would have to be annexed to a site license holder in Canada that would act as the importer of record. And so that could be your company, that could be our company, it could be somebody else. Somebody with an NHP site license in Canada would have to have that third-party manufacturer annexed to their site license before they could actually start to import that product into Canada. So I think that answers the question, but I don't know if Andrew or Cory, if you guys have anything else to clarify for that one.
Yeah, I just was going to mention further to that in terms of the Corella juice. One thing you need to keep in mind too is that for natural health products in liquid form, particular, there's a limitation of 95 milliliters as a dosage. So that's basically a shot version. Once if you have basically a beverage that's above 95 milliliters, that, in the eyes of Health Canada, CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, that would be a food, but you also then have to determine, is Corella allowed in foods? So it's not just an automatic, allowability of every ingredient that's in a natural health product is allowed in food. So there's this food NHP interface, and it's best to verify that with someone like us, like Quality Smart Solutions. So that's just another caveat with the Corella juice in particular.
Yeah, on the liquid front, I agree. It is tricky. I think it's 89 milliliters, like 9, but same kind of concept applies. It's about 3.5 ounces for most, for the US folk. Anything larger than that, that's meant to be consumed as a single, like consumed all at once, would have to be a food, as Andrew mentioned, just based on the volume. But then it comes down to, are the ingredients you're using allowed? So there might be a point where you just can't bring that juice to market in the way that you want. But yeah, there's a lot of liquids, like 5 Hour Energy would be, a small caffeinated beverage that you take, and that's a natural health product. A shot of espresso is a small caffeinated beverage that would be a food product. So it's that's where the liquid is a tricky category. In terms of the question on screen, I think I'm gathering this is the same one as the Moringa distributor. Yeah, you could own the NPN. Somebody else could own the NPN. Most commonly, the brand owner. So if it's an Indian brand that you're looking to distribute, very often the brand owner themselves would be the ones to apply for the NPN, and they would own the NPN. But depending on the commercial arrangement you have with a brand, maybe you're the sole Canadian distributor and they allow you to own the NPN and license their brand. That's going to be ultimately between you and the company to figure out the relationship. Health Canada, they're less concerned about commercial agreements or trademarks or anything like that. They're looking more at the ingredients in your formula, the dosage, the claims, and is it safe and effective? They're not looking at legal or, patent infringement, trademark law. That's not Health Canada's oversight. But yeah, if you want to reach out with this specific scenario, we're happy to chat after the call. Very quickly, someone asked about legal patent advice. Unfortunately, no, we're not a law firm, so we do not provide legal advice. Anything we say today, not legal advice. But yeah, for the budget, sorry, Alessandra, I'm jumping around there. For the budget, it's really hard to say. Honestly, most of your cost is probably going to go into inventory. Truly, like that's the biggest expense for these businesses often. But yeah, how much work is up front from a regulatory standpoint? There's going to be a few variables. It's going to be how many products, how many suppliers are you importing from potentially? Within those products, are they class 1 applications, class 2, class 3? How many ingredients? There's a lot of variables in terms of how much work goes into getting you set up and ready. So yeah, the budget could be anywhere from low to mid 4 figures of regulatory work up to mid to high 5 figures, depending on if you're launching 3 products or 35 products. It's going to change drastically. But for most businesses, inventory ends up being the greatest cost. And yeah, once again, Andrew, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, there's, starting a business, there are so many factors. I mean, that's kind of an open-ended question. Obviously, Dave addressed the regulatory costs, but yeah, you have to think about inventory, your packaging, your bottle, the ingredients, if you're sourcing them yourself. And then, you build a website, your marketing budget, do you hire a sales rep, or do you just do it yourself if you're small scale, where it's, a smaller kind of group of people doing it. It's just a lot to consider. Basically, like I advise, whether you're starting a natural health product or a medical device company, you really need to have a business plan, right? You shouldn't ever just jump into something and hope for the best. Lay it all out, right? Look at the, just Google business plan or go on AI and business plan and see what all goes into it. And that's really where you should start before you start any business, let alone a natural health product business.
I'm looking. Okay, yeah, cool. Cory, do you want to maybe address this? What I think there's a few questions about stability. So yeah, if people want to reach out after the fact, we can have a guided conversation about your specific product and where you're at. But Cory, I don't know if you want to take a crack at that one.
So 3 sets of stability data. Maybe Emmett, give us an email after the. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, so we could probably connect and answer your questions more specifically.
Yeah. One question was around cost. Yeah, exactly. So there's going to be several costs that go into this, but when it comes to Health Canada fees, I can address this kind of across the board. When it comes to currently today, if we submitted any application, site license, NPN application, changes, anything like that, there's no Health Canada fees right now for any of these, but they are coming, I would say. The most recent guidance document has it that December 1st of this year is when Health Canada fees are going to go into play. And so, there's a chance that gets pushed out. But the most recent, news is that December 1st is when Health Canada fees are going to start to come into play. You can look up, I believe if you Googled NHP revisions to the fees, something along those lines, you'd find the most recent guidance document. But site licensing will carry an annual fee as well as an upfront application fee. Depending on the activity, it's I think mid to high 4 figures, somewhere between 3,000 to 7,000 for most site licenses. And then Shelby and So the foreign site reference number, this is a good question. It's something that we didn't touch on today, just didn't get to in the details about site licensing. Foreign site reference numbers, FSRNs, they're issued to foreign manufacturing facilities often that have been through the Health Canada review process and have proven that they follow good manufacturing practices. It's not a requirement. It is helpful, but it's not a requirement. There are other ways that we can prove to Health Canada that a manufacturer follows GMP, good manufacturing practices. We might be able to use their GMP certificate, depending on who audited them. Very common US manufacturers will have NSF certification. That's something that we can often leverage with, we would need some additional supporting information, but NSF certification is also something we can leverage. The FSRN is I would say, kind of like the best case scenario. It's almost a plug and play. You provide the reference number and Health Canada realizes they've already approved this person, but it's not a requirement. There would be other ways to prove that the facility follows GMP.
Yeah, that's a good way of explaining it. I would say it's one of the best forms of GMP evidence that if you have that readily available, that's great.
Cool. And so, I was going to say, this is another very specific question. Cory, if you want to take a crack, you can, but I think same thing. If you want to reach out with your specific scenario, what you have to date, we can do a bit of an assessment on if what you have right now in place is sufficient or not, or if there's any gaps. When we're working as the importer for any brand, this type of gap assessment is part of our standard practice when we're onboarding new suppliers and new brands. We understand what stability, testing has been completed on the product. Are there any gaps between what you currently have and what we're going to need to bring to market? So I don't know if there's a blanket answer that would apply, but I would say we definitely regularly help brands determine if what they have is relevant, but I don't know specifically. Cory, maybe.
Jazz, feel free to reach out afterwards. I will say this, that it seems like the question is whether or not the real-time stability is completed before you start selling. Again, if you do have that accelerated data complete, suggesting that you have 3-year shelf life, then you can demonstrate to Health Canada that your real-time is in process. But if that doesn't answer your question, then of course feel free to reach out after the call.
This one I was just looking at. So this gets back to something that Cory had mentioned earlier, and this is, I wouldn't say necessarily common, but we've heard many instances in this case where a proprietary blend, some sort of supplier does not want to disclose this. Unfortunately, Health Canada, for lack of a better term, they don't care. They need you to disclose proprietary blends, ingredient by ingredient, exact quantity of each ingredient, if they're going to be positioned as medicinal ingredients. So sometimes we work directly with ingredient suppliers. If they provide that information directly to us so that we can submit it to Health Canada. You, as the brand owner, never actually become privy to that information. We've had that before. We can have kind of redacted certificates of analysis sometimes if people want to protect the specific supplier they use and stuff like that. So there is some, confidentiality that can be used when manufacturers or ingredient suppliers, are sensitive. But Health Canada will require every medicinal ingredient to be the exact quantity of those ingredients to be disclosed during the NPN application process. So, sometimes your hands are a little tied and something's got to give. Either the manufacturer supplier has to become a little more flexible or something like that. I think someone in the chat answered a question in the chat, which is awesome. Thank you guys. So NPN and DIN, they are two different things. NPN stands for natural product number. DIN stands for drug identification number. They're similar in the sense that they're, I believe, 8-digit numbers in both situations issued to products that have been approved by Health Canada. NPNs are issued to natural health products. DINs are issued to drugs. So that is the key difference. So if your active or medicinal ingredients are natural, your product would likely receive an NPN, versus if they are drug ingredients, then your product would receive a DIN. So I know we're running up on time. We're getting there. For next steps, if anyone does have any specific questions, you're welcome to reach out via the email on screen. But yeah, I'll pass it over to Alessandra to kind of wrap it up.
I guess there's one more question here.
Yes, we can help with DINs as well. We deal with most OTC products. There's very few exceptions that we don't help with. But yeah, foods, cosmetics, medical devices, drugs, all of those types of very common over-the-counter products we should be able to assist with. There's certain drugs, prescription drugs for sure that we don't deal with, but a lot of very common, sunscreens, shampoos, a lot of these types of drug products, we should be able to support.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So I guess our time is up. That's it, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope the session gave you a clear picture of what it takes to get your NPN and what to expect along the way. Before you head out, feel free to scan the QR code here on the screen. It's going to take you to a quick form, a contact form, where you can book a free consultation with us, with our team. But if it's easier, you can also email us at info@qualitysmartsolutions.com. And if you want to learn more about our services, feel free to visit our website at any time. Just a quick reminder, we'll be sending out the recording soon. So you're going to have everything we covered today in your inbox. This is also going to be on our YouTube channel. If you want to check out, we have a bunch of other videos on this subject, on this topic. So not only this webinar. So yeah, if anything else comes up, or if you have more questions later on, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We are always here to help. Thanks again, and we hope to chat with you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.